Chapter 3 Charleston Part 1 James was used to a life of luxury. He was the first to admit he was spoiled. His parents were wealthy, he had gone to an expensive private school, he had never properly struggled a day in his life, not in a way that had any relation to money. And James liked his life, but he was suddenly very sure that he was just meant to live in a van. The moment he saw it parked outside the hotel, he fell in love. Simple as that. The exterior was all black, not anything exciting. Mary told them that maybe if there was time in their schedule, they could get it decorated, but James didn't even care. They had a tour bus. Them! Marauders! He resisted the urge to jump up and down, but just barely. He was so excited for the next couple of weeks to come, nothing could dull his shine, not even Regulus Black. He was a bit pouty, which was sort of justified, James had to admit. They had literally forced him onto the bus, but they had no other choice. He wouldn't come willingly, and they wouldn't leave without him. They hadn't planned for him to be joining them, so their bus only had 4 bunks, but I could figure that out later. Prongs! Come look at the bathroom, Sirius yelled, as if he were excited about it. James's smile faltered slightly, and Sirius laughed at him. He was genuinely too tall to comfortably stand in the bathroom, which meant that Remus was too. It's genius! James shoved him lightly, ducking his head out so that he could stand up straight again. Yeah, all right, Padfoot, you're just jealous 'cause you're short. They probably would have stayed up, had they not already been awake all night. James slept for maybe half an hour while at the hospital, and that was it. So he couldn't be blamed for just climbing into the top bunk and falling directly asleep, not bothering to close the curtain. James greatly valued his sleep, or he used to at least. In school, he did sports, so he always had to go to bed early and wake up early. It just became a natural pattern in his life. These days, James slept when and where he could, even if it was in an uncomfortable hospital chair or at 6 a.m. on a tour bus. If he didn't sleep enough, he tended to get a bit cranky, at least until he got a coffee. For that reason, when Peter woke him up just a couple hours later, he couldn't be mad. He was holding out a cardboard cup that was from a local coffee shop close to where they had stopped for some food. He couldn't very well drink it in his bunk. There wasn't nearly enough space to properly sit upright. Sirius, Remus, and Pete were all in the front part of the bus, and James was slightly upset that he had missed the stop. He wanted to get out a bit and stretch his leg, although he supposed he would have plenty of time on stage that night. And there was the notch. It was close enough to 8 p.m. that James was able to start getting nervous. He always got nervous, no matter how much they practiced in rehearsals, and no matter how many shows they played. James felt butterflies. At first, he had hated them, but now they just made him excited to feel the pulse of the music through the soles of his shoes, the energy emanating off of the crowd and going right for his heart. It was the good kind of nervous, where you were restless with thoughts of what was to come. Good. You're up. Mary called again. Remus said the moment James hopped out of his bunk. Overnight, he had overheated a little bit and thrown off his shirt. He almost stopped to pick it up as he made his way to the front, but he was too tired, and he was comfortable without the shirt on. James smiled. She misses us. She yelled at us for being 10 minutes late. Yeah, sounds like her, James said, taking the only open seat next to Sirius. He looked just as tired as James felt. When is she coming? 2 weeks, I think she said. Remus offered James the bag of goldfish he was eating, but he shook his head. He wanted something sweet, like pancakes or French toast. Oh, James would absolutely love a French toast. He had a huge sweet tooth, not quite as bad as Remus, but he would choose sweet over savory any day. His attention was drawn to the back of the bus, where Peter had just woken Regulus up. His hair was all mussed, and his clothes hung slightly awkwardly off his body. Sirius hadn't guessed his size properly, so they ended up being a bit too big. He looked sweet, James found himself thinking. He knew better. He knew Regulus hated him and that he tried hard to be anything but sweet. Still, James wanted a bite. Good morning, sunshine, Sirius said to him. There was a coffee awaiting him, and he at least mumbled a small thank you to Peter for going to go get them. James had to look away. Sirius would never forgive him for even looking at his brother in this way. So he just simply would not look. He had plenty of other things to occupy his mind with. That first day on the bus had been awkward. They were all trying to figure out how to work around each other without getting in their own ways. Remus stayed to himself. He tended to get cranky in close quarters like this. Peter himself was slightly claustrophobic, so he hung out in the back room because it had the most space. Also, because Regulus said he would only deal with one of them at a time if they were insistent on the whole kidnapping thing. James and Sirius played card games in the front and drank a couple of beers. Really, they were just trying to pass the time before they got to the venue. At one point, Regulus had just stood in front of them and asked if they had any more beers. Well, he asked Sirius. He was still hating James apparently, which was fine. He was totally fine with that. Their bus finally stopped, meaning they were at the music hall. It was supposed to be another big one. They were playing to almost 2,000 people. Seeing the concert hall empty was one of James's favorite things. He loved the juxtaposition of right now when the only people there were them and the tech crew, to in a couple of hours when their fans were there. Still, he couldn't quite get used to the idea of having fans. It was ridiculously cool. He had signed a couple of autographs randomly on the street, although his signature had changed every time, since he couldn't decide which variation he liked best. He had to try out everyone, which ones were easiest to do quickly, or which ones looked the best. But he liked all of them. Hey! James looked to see Marlene McKinnon, the lead singer of their opening act, Lion's Head, shouting at them through the microphone. She was still wearing her pajamas, a pair of shorts, and a large sweatshirt that advertised a band that James himself had never heard of. The rest of the band consisted of bassist Emmeline Vance, drummer Alice Fortescue, and guitarist Benny Fenwick. Marlene was the only one on stage at the moment, though, which meant the rest of the band was likely busy with instruments or something similar. Sirius lifted himself onto the stage easily, and James followed suit, the two of them crowding Marlene into a huge bear hug. She was also one of their good friends, and she had a voice that was made of pop rock music. Remus and Peter took the stairs, therefore missing out on the group hug. How did you get here before us? Peter asked, giving her a hug anyway. He was a very affectionate person with the people he loved, and they all adored Marlene. She hadn't been able to be there for the first show, so their opening act was a 20-something named Shawn Mendes, who had a very high vocal range and some very catchy songs. He was alright, but he wasn't Marlene. It's called punctuality, she told them. We're punctual, Sirius defended. She gave them a look, one that made James immediately start laughing. They were never on time, no matter what they did. But Mary gave them enough lectures about it. It wasn't our fault, though, Peter said. It never is. The very loud sound of microphone feedback interrupted their conversation, and they all looked up to the box where their sound tech was either messing with them or, well, no, that was the only option. Lily Evans absolutely loved to cause trouble. That much they had learned at their show in New York. Lily was a short redhead who had stolen all of their hearts the moment they met her. She was the main sound technician, responsible for making sure every inch of the hall had good sound quality, and to also make sure that their in ears were working properly. It was her pre recorded voice that they would hear counting down the seconds before the backing track started. James hadn't known just how many people were needed to get the tour off the ground. There was the sound crew, the lighting crew, hair and makeup, security, stage managers, etc. The list went on and on forever, and James was still in the process of learning everyone's name. Marlene put the microphone back on the stand, taking a couple of steps back. All right, your turn then, boys. The four of them got set up, and James slung a red electric guitar over his neck, letting it rest there while more microphones were getting set up. That is the sexiest guitar I have ever seen, Sirius told him. His was slick and black and, in James's opinion, just as sexy. That is the sexiest guitar I've ever seen, James repeated, but he was pointing at Sirius's guitar that he named Stevie. Peter leaned forward into his mic slightly. This is the most homoerotic thing I've ever seen, he announced to the entire music hall, hitting the cymbals on his kit like he just made the best joke ever. Clearly, you don't spend enough time around them, then, Remus said, turning his face. It's intentional, Peter told him with a smile. James and Sirius tried to look offended, but they couldn't when Peter was laughing. It was the kind of laugh that was so bad that you just had to laugh with him. Remus had a smile playing on his lips as well, although he turned away to try and hide it. It was mostly a mic and sound check, so they just played whatever they wanted and Peter sang with them a little bit. James knew it was hard to play drums and sing at the same time, which was why he almost never sang live. Sirius went behind Peter and literally took the sticks from his hands, trying to play over his body while he sang Another One Bites the Dust. It sounded horrible, since Sirius was not keeping time well at all. Remus had to try and keep up with him since Sirius wouldn't, but they were all lost by the second chorus. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why Peter Pettigrew is our drummer, James said as the music slowly faded out, only Sirius still pounding on the drums without any rhythm. In the back of his head, he could practically hear Mary yelling at them for messing around too much when they should be rehearsing. But what was music if it couldn't be fun? Peter had to yank the six away from Sirius before he stopped, and he was grinning wildly. What an adrenaline rush, Sirius said, picking his guitar back up from where he had left it in the middle of the stage. That hurt my ears, Lily said through a microphone she had in the box. Sirius squinted his eyes to try and see her, flipping her off. Lionshead did a lot of covers still, not having that many of their own songs written and recorded just yet. James's favorite to listen was Valerie, and while he should have been getting ready to go on stage, he was standing in the wings and just watching them. Marlene had a way of enchanting the crowd, and even though most of them weren't there for her, she got their attention. She had changed out of her pajamas into a mostly leather ensemble. She had black leather shorts, a cropped black tank top, and the same oversized leather jacket that she wore almost every day. She was wearing black boots too, that made her a couple of inches taller, and she commanded power with them. Sirius came to stand next to him, and James noticed that he was all ready for the night too. He had gotten the makeup team to do some eyeliner on him, and he had glitter highlighting his cheekbones. He looked like a rock and roll personified, and that was exactly what James told him, which of course made Sirius grin widely. My mother would be rolling in her grave if she saw me like this, he said proudly. James hated Sirius's family, and every time they were mentioned, he was filled with that same anger he had felt when Sirius showed up at his doorstep, bruised and bloodied, and still trying to put on a brave face. To this day, there was still nothing that had ever been able to top the rage he had felt. And if it hadn't been for Sirius begging him not to, James would have shown up to their house and showed them a piece of his mind. All right, pranks, we're doing shots, Sirius said when James went quiet, dragging him to the back rooms where Remus and Peter still were. Peter had slicked his blonde hair back with gel, and James resisted the urge to muck it all up like he usually did. Remus didn't have to do anything. Really and truly. There was always something behind his eyes that just proved he belonged on that stage. It was when he was most confident, when James and Sirius crowded around him, the three of them playing their instruments together without a care for the crowd in those moments, because it was only them and Pete carrying the tempo. Peter loved Jaeger bombs, and he made them all take a shot of it before every show, refusing any other type of alcohol until after. He called it their tradition. James called it absolute torture. He had never liked Jaeger bombs, but he took the shots with everyone else, resisting the urge to scrunch his face up in disgust. Another thing, Sirius simply did not believe in chases. Remus took it all like a champ. He had the highest alcohol tolerance out of any of them. James was sure he had only ever seen him truly drunk a total of one time, because other than that he was still lucid and in control of himself. It was an enviable quality, but Remus had just an effortless coolness about him. Sirius did one more shot than everyone else. They tried not to go on stage drunk, it made their music worse. Just a little bit before for confidence, and then a lot afterwards to celebrate. James couldn't get him alone until they were on the wings of the stage, about to go on. But something was going on, and the music could wait an extra minute or two if it meant making sure Sirius was okay. What happened? James asked. Sirius looked up at him, eyes slightly dilated and blurry. He had done more shots than James had noticed. He isn't coming. Who? Reggie. He's not coming to the show. Sirius left to go on stage before James could say anything, and James had to take a couple of seconds to reorient himself and follow him on, playing the first chords of the song over the roar of the crowd. His thoughts became one with the music, and for 78 minutes all he knew was G, E minor, F, A minor, F. James sang like it was all he knew how to do. He played the guitar like it was what he was born doing. He was sweaty and gross, and he was high on adrenaline, not getting tired once, as he ran around the stage and interacted with the crowd. Oh, he absolutely loved interacting with the crowd. If it wasn't for their security banning it, James would jump down in an instant and shake every single one of their hands. With each passing day, James was waiting for the other shoe to drop. He was waiting for the rough side of fame, the price of selling your soul to be adored. Everyone told them there was a shadow monster that followed around famous people, a darkness that wanted to swallow them whole. Whatever it was, it hadn't caught up to them yet. Had it been a normal night, James would have gone out with everyone else. But he had something he needed to do before he could let loose. He was buzzing with energy when he got off the stage, and he was planning on using it to do something good. or something that he really hoped would end up being good. You aren't coming out tonight? Sirius asked, a tiny pout on his lips. James shook his head. Sorry, mate. Not feeling it. Are you sick? Peter asked. He knew this would be a problem, trying to get his friends to understand that they didn't need to go out drinking and smoking after every single performance. It could just be pure art without the pressure of falling into alcohol and drugs. And even if James did want to go out with them, he really did have things he needed to fix. They entertained the crowd to the fullest extent. They had done their job beautifully, but it was at least obvious to them that Sirius was off. James needed to fix it.